Hi, I'm Ali and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Smooth Blending. Let's gather up your stuff and let's get colouring together. So to start off with, we're going to colour in one of the bases of the donut actually itself. And with smooth blend colouring, what you need to do is follow the mantra of light, dark, medium, light. So we've started off here with the gold brown shade and we're using the GB6 if you're following along with Spectrum Noir pens. I'm actually using the Triblend bullet point pens here, and you colour in all of the image that you're wanting and giving it a nice smooth layer all the way across, and that'll make the paper nice and juicy, ready for us to add more layers to it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put in our shadows, so the darker areas. So here we've moved to the gold brown 10, which is on the Triblend pens, the other side of the pen, and we're just going to go round where the shadows would be. So in this case with the donut, it's going to be underneath the icing and then around the base of the donut. And I'm just putting that in. You might notice when I'm colouring in, I don't do a whole straight line. I'm more flicking around the edges. That helps you to get a nice coverage but without actually going over the edges. If you find it difficult to stay within the lines, try that little flicking moment. Okay, and this is where the magic happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that mid shade to blend between the dark and the light. So what you're using is very small circular motions over the top of where the dark and the light meet. So you're actually colouring over both of those shades, okay? And what that does is it pushes back some of the dark and adds some pigment to the light. Then what you need to do is go back to your lightest shade like we've done here with the GB6, and you're going to do the same process again. So you're going to use small circular motions where you've gone over the mid to light. Now I know I've done that quickly. To get a smooth blend you do need to work quite fast, so I'm going to show you it all again, and please feel free to jump back around this video, pause it where you need to. Let's try that basic blend again, three-way blend this is called. So we're using the lightest shade of our GYs, it's just our GY2, and we're just laying it all down, colouring that whole area, and that's going to make it nice and juicy with alcohol, so that when we lay more colours down on top of it, it's going to be able to blend nicely within the paper. Alcohol pens blend like this, they blend down through the paper rather than on top of it. So now we're moving to the darkest shade, so in this case it's our GY5, and we're going to put our shadows in. So we're going to colour in under the icing in this case and around the edges of the donut. This gives it that nice depth. The darker you can go with this, the better in my opinion, but we're being a bit tame with this one as it's your first go. Remember to use the reference pictures that I've put on the tutorial for you, so you can see where I'm putting my shadows and keeping my highlights. This is going to be even more important to do when we go to the icing. Okay, so we've put the shadows in, so now we're going to do that magic and blend the two together. So we're using our mid shade, GY3, and we're using those circular motions. If you can see, I'm going over the top of where the two colours meet. So I'm colouring over the dark and the light. That's the key. Don't go up to the line, you're going over the line. And what that's doing, like I said, is it's pushing back through the paper some of the darkness, but adding some pigment onto the light, giving another shade and helping that all blend together. It's just beautiful. I never tire of seeing this blending happening. And then what you need to do is go back to the lightest shade, so that's our GY2, and same again, so we're just going to use circular motions and we're just colouring over where that mid colour that you were using has left a line, and making sure you're colouring back over all of the light that's left within that colouring thing. So I hope that was helpful. That's how you do a three-way blend, and like I said, the speed of doing it is key to getting a good blend. You've got to work while the alcohol is still wet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to this icing. It's a little bit more tricky to do because we're thinking about our shadows and highlights, but please use the reference image that I've given you to help you with this. So we're colouring in the ice blue shades here. So this is Ice Blue 1, Ice Blue 2 and Ice Blue 3 on the Triblends, but you can use any of the pens that you've got. But we're starting with our lightest shade, Ice Blue 1. And what I'm doing here is I'm just planning where I'm going to leave my highlights. So these highlights are where I'm going to leave white areas. That's because icing is shiny, and shiny things usually have a white highlight on them. So I'm just planning where I'm putting those, and I always make them a little bit larger than what I'm wanting them to be at the end, because that blending is going to go and push them further together. So make your highlights larger and plan where you're going to have them. So you can see on the guide here that I've given you, I've left some highlights on the base of the icing, and also in a ring around the top, and then a little spot right on the top of the donut as well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start colouring this in. Now, like I said, it's important that you do this whilst it's nice and wet with alcohol. So we're going to take this large section and just split it into smaller sections so that we work on a bit at a time, so it's not dried out. Alcohol evaporates and dries very quickly, so we're just going to work on one section at a time. So I've just coloured in that top section in the lightest shade, leaving the white areas that I wanted to keep white. I'm then going to put in my darkest shade, so the Ice Blue 3, and we're just putting that in with the shadows. You can see in the bottom corner I've now changed to the second reference image that I've given you, and that's just showing you where I'm planning to put all of my shadows. Then once I've put in my shadows, I'm then going to go into my blending. So my middle colour, my mid colour, Ice Blue 2, is now going to go in circular motions over the top of the dark and the light, just to push back the dark, add some more to the light and blend those two together. That also gives a line, it leaves a line, you'll be able to see, it leaves a line between the mid and the light. And so what you need to do then is get your lightest shade, which I'm going to do now, and blend the mid that I've just put down back into the light. Now, you don't just want to blend the line between the two. You want to make sure that you cover the whole area again of anything that's left that's light, because what you're doing every time you add pigment on, you're actually darkening that colour. So make sure that you colour the whole thing, and then your blend will be more smooth. But try not to go over anything that's your shadow with your lightest, because that's just going to push it backwards and take away the darkness that you had. So let's try that again with the lower section. So I'm just going in with my lightest shade, and just colouring that whole section in. I'm not worrying about if I've got a smooth blend on this. You will be able to see patchiness on this section because I don't want to oversaturate the paper. Where by oversaturation I mean that I've made the paper so wet and put so much pigment into it that it actually won't be able to hold anymore. Once I start putting the darkness down, it's just going to bleed all over the place. So I'm just putting a nice base layer down. It won't be smooth, like I said. You'll see patches where it will you'll have lighter areas to darker areas, but that's okay because we're going to go all over the top of this again. So now I'm putting in my shadows. Use the guide to help you with this. A little tip for you with shadows and highlights: if you've got an area that you really want that shine to be really seen, like at the base of the icing that we've got here, make your shadow and your highlight really clear and distinctive. You can have a line there, that's okay. You don't have to have a smooth blend between the two. It'll give you a really crisp highlight then. So I'm just putting the darkest shade right on the edge of my icing at the bottom there, but making sure that I'm leaving the white crisp highlight still there. So you can see I plan out where I'm going to put the shadow, draw that in, and then colour that in over the top. Now here is where I am trying to get a smooth blend. So when I'm colouring in the whole section here of this darkness, because I'm trying not to go back over that again, I'm going to try and put as much ink in that it looks as though there's going to be a nice smoothness to it and no darker areas or lighter areas. The more that you do this, the more you'll get used to how much you need to do. So there we go, we've got our shadow on now, and we're going to blend the two together. So I'm using my mid colour and I'm just using small motions here because I've only got a small area now to blend. You can see I've moved from using those little circular motions to kind of flicky motions to blend the two together. This is something you can do as well. It works to help blend, but make sure that you're going, like I say, over the top of both the dark and the light, and then I can just use little motions underneath just to help that blend together a little bit better. And then to blend that mid into the light, I'm just going back in with my lightest and blending between where the mid has left a line and any of the light shade that's left. You can see I'm using these flicky motions again because I'm wanting that highlight to be preserved. I don't want to use those circular motions to make that highlight not as crisp. There we are. Now that may not be the best blend, but also it might be. The thing with alcohol blending is that it's still blending there within the paper as it's wet. So I wouldn't go back to that again until it is fully dried, and then I'll be able to see if that blend is great. Usually when you come back you will see that it is better. So whilst that is drying, what we're going to do is move on to the next section. This time we're working with our bright pinks, and as I did before, I'm just going in with my lightest shade. So this is BP1, and I'm just planning where I'm going to preserve my highlights. So you can see in the reference drawing I've got a nice ring around the centre, and also I'm leaving a shine on the bottom of the icing. And because this is a smaller area to work with, we could colour the whole image in one go, but as some of you may still be new to this, I'm just going to do one section at a time again. So just colouring in that area in the centre there, making sure I'm leaving the highlights in the bright pink one. Then I'm going to go in with my darkest shade, the bright pink 3, and I'm going to be putting in the darker areas. So using the guide again, it's filling in over the top of that. It's going over the top. Remember doing that bottom line just to give that shadow there, and then going along the centre as well. Within this donut, there isn't actually much of a depth between the two blends in this one. The distance between the lightest and the darkest shade is actually not very far, so you really do need to be careful about preserving those highlights, otherwise it's just going to blur into one pinkness. So now I'm going in with my mid shade just to blend that dark and light together, just very carefully just going over the top of where the two meet there. You can see here now why I make my highlights larger than I think they're going to be in the end, because as you're colouring, the ink's moving, it does bleed a little bit, and so if you don't leave them larger, you'll end up just covering them all completely. So always just plan those highlights a little bit bigger than what you're wanting them to be at the end. So I've just then gone back over again with the lightest, just to push that mid down again. So let's do the top of it again now, one more time together. So I'm just colouring in the whole top of that in the lightest shade, and I'm going to not worry about whether it's a nice smooth blend. I'm just getting a nice coverage so that I've got a nice moist area to work on. Then going to put in my darkest shade, putting in those shadows which will be underneath the donut that's sitting on top. And then you move on again to the mid level, put the mid shade down to blend that darkness into the light to get that gradient going, and then once again with the lightest just to give that blend a little bit more from the mid to the light. So that was a bit of a speedy tutorial on how the three-way blend works, how you can get a gradient from the dark to the light. So we're going to colour in the rest of the donuts now, and I'm showing you it just a little bit closer so you can see what's going on a little bit clearer hopefully. And we're just following that whole process again. So we're going from light to dark to mid and then back to light again. So here I am, and I'm just colouring that in with the lightest shade of this brown that I'm wanting to have a nice chocolate donut. Then you put in the dark shades, and then the mid shade, and then the light again. So what I'd like you to do is follow along with this video using the process that we've been doing, using the reference guides that I've given you, and feel free to pause it where you need to, go back where you need to. I'm showing you this in the actual speed that I was colouring at, so that you can get used to the speed that you need to colour in to get a nice smooth blend. So have fun, and if you've got any questions, there is a forum that you can go on to. Ask the questions, somebody on there will help. So I'll be going into the smooth blending forum, and I'll be there to answer any questions that you have. If you want to post your pictures, I'd love to see them. If you want any advice on how you can make your pictures better, if you're wanting that, I'd love to help as well. We're all there to help each other. That's what I'm wanting to get from these packs. That's the reason why I designed them, is you've got all these pens, let's use them and help each other become better colorists. Thanks for joining me, and I'll be back with you later. So there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you've learnt something here. It's been lovely to have you, and I'll see you in the forum. Please ask any questions that you have. Your next steps to do with this tutorial now is to have a go at the rest of the images in the pack. So use the reference pictures that I've put up for you, and also the completed colouring inspiration pictures that I've done for you. If you've got any questions about those, please ask them as well. I'll see you in the forum, and I'll see you on the next tutorial. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.